Welcome, everybody, to the Collateral Damage podcast once again. Today we have a very special guest, and Maureen, I understand that this is a friend of yours.
Yeah, I feel very lucky to have become friends with Mandy McGowan, who is, as a lot of people may remember her from this one moment in time, probably the worst moment in her life when she overdosed in a dollar store in
Mm,
Massachusetts with her daughter with her. And that,
wow.
yeah, and three people. And this is the part that every time I say it, you would think that you could say something enough that you would take the sting out of it,
Right.
but every single time I say it or think about it, I all I can think about is the fact that three people stood by with their phones out and videoed it and shared that video on Facebook and other places while her daughter tried to wake her up and while she struggled to be, to stay alive.
Right.
And I just don't understand that. And when I, and I can't, I would say when I first saw it, but I've seen the first few seconds of it because I refuse to watch anything like that
Yeah.
because I can't imagine why anybody would want to watch that. It serves no purpose. It doesn't educate. It just shows somebody at the worst moment in their life.
Right.
And I think by watching it, we just say it's okay. So I've never watched the video, but I was very upset and was took would not allow that to be the video on Magnolia or any of our Facebook sites, and I was
Well, I
just very
wish
upset.
I wish that was more common. I mean, I actually just saw there was a female gymnast that had a traumatic experience during one of her performances where she broke both of her legs in an extremely uncomfortable and traumatic way, and it was obviously videotaped. And it was being shared all over the internet, and she came out publicly and she was like, please don't share my video, my pain is not your entertainment. And
Exactly.
that was amazing to hear. And I mean, I don't know,
No,
I
good
have
for her.
I saw the video kind of like by accident scrolling through my Instagram feed. It was like a meme, and obviously it was terrible. I didn't even think it was real, and I definitely didn't think it was current. And then I saw the video come out where she was suggesting, please don't watch my video,
Right.
please stop sharing it. My family is watching this, like my friends are watching this. I don't want to relive my pain over and over again in your social media feed. It's
What
not
is wrong with?
entertainment.
I mean, what is wrong with people? I just don't understand. I really don't understand. And I know that there's some small group of people that thinks that this is educational, that this
Mm,
is what happens. People that are at that low point in their lives, that is not helpful.
right.
It's not educating anybody. We already know people are dying. We already know it's happening in very public and awful ways, and that children are suffering. We don't
Hmm.
need that. And it just doesn't help. It just makes somebody feel more worthless and more unhappy
Of
and more
course.
likely to use drugs, actually.
Yeah, what are the odds that you videotape somebody overdosing and then you show them the video and that's why they stop? They stop because of the cumulative pain. They stop because of the experience. They stop because they want a better life, not because you got a dramatic shot of them in an overdose scenario. You
Well,
know.
in the small town that I was living up until recently, two young people came upon doing a summer job, came upon a woman that had overdosed and was very, very close to death. And they called the police and
Mhm.
then they videotaped it and then they shared it on Facebook.
Wow.
So this even as an adult, you think this has is not damaging anybody. This is your children's reaction to perfectly good kids. I mean, they were doing a summer job
Hmm.
in a town program. So this is not, this is like your every kid, and that was their reaction. We've got to start thinking about what's right and what's wrong instead of just what was going to get us more likes and shares on Facebook.
Right, right. Which
So
which we like for our show, but we're not going to show you these videos because it would be terrible.
no,
I mean,
absolutely not.
I guess I look at it, and you and I have talked about this. Why we have this name for our show, Collateral Damage, and I think that these are the scenarios that people don't think about. These are the stuff that's left behind. This is the collateral damage. This is after the thing that happens. What's left, and what's
Right.
left for these people that are videotaped is that it's shame, it's stigma. It forever changes their name. They're forever stuck with this by certain people. Especially if it's posted and shared. It's out there. And I think recently, probably a few weeks ago, John Oliver did a show on his Last Week Tonight, and he had what was the woman there with Clinton? Why can't I think of her name now?
Oh, I oh my gosh.
Come on, everybody knows her name. Why don't we know her name?
Monica Lewinsky.
Monica Lewinsky. And just saying
Lewinsky.
that name, Monica Lewinsky, right?
Right.
It brings about everything that she went through. But who was Monica Lewinsky? Is she the Clinton incident? Of course not. You know, she's a person. She had a life before that. She had a life after that. And most people, you know, don't think about what happened since then. And he did this great show where he interviewed her and talked about, you know, she thought about changing her name. She thought about relocating. She went through all these different scenarios of how to escape the shame of the experience that was so publicly put out there. And I mean, that's a different scale, and I'm not comparing the two, but you know, definitely, you come out of something like this, and you're like, what am I going to do to fix this? How do I stop this from being the rest of my life?
Well, I mean, I think in everybody, to a smaller extent, can think about a one awful, horrible time in their life and imagine if everybody got to say it. I mean,
Mm,
this is inhuman, is what it is, and it makes me really angry. But I was very angry publicly, and
yeah.
somebody put me in touch with Mandy at that time, and I was able to help her get into treatment. So which she couldn't do because she lived in New Hampshire, she couldn't get on a waiting list.
Right.
They wouldn't treat her in Massachusetts, which is where she overdosed because she was a New Hampshire resident. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just all this ridiculousness.
And so
And
you were able to help her. You were able to get her into treatment after this incident, right?
yeah, and I became, got close with her and became friends with her and watched her do an amazing job of coming out of this, despite the fact that she was haunted
Hmm.
and tracked down by news cameras and
Oh,
had websites made about her. And oh my God, she would go, was trying to get her daughter back, but her daughter was in New Hampshire. She was in Massachusetts. I mean, the whole thing was just such a nightmare.
that's
And
terrible.
throughout the whole process, she kept her, she continued to try to get well
Right.
and now tried to get well and tries to help other people too,
Hmm.
which is who she always was. This is the person she always was. She's always been a good person who made a very, very bad choice.
Right.
And
Well, that's what we are. We're not our choices. You know, we're not the incidents that's not what makes us up. You know, I'm not the last bad thing I did that could have been caught on video, and neither is
oh
she.
God, let's hope not.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not
Yeah, well,
because
let's. I don't want to
yeah,
think about the last bad thing I did that could have been on video. Nobody does, and you know, I
right.
think to be constantly reminded of it is just it's torturous. So
Right. So I feel really good about giving her the opportunity to talk because nobody really cares what she had to say after that. They just wanted
right,
to keep bashing her.
and they don't
And
want to know where she is now, right? Like,
no,
did she change her life? Did she get well? People don't want that. They want the
there,
trauma. They want that
there would be
craziness.
no real interest in her unless she overdosed again, and then everybody would be out with their phones and they'd be curious again. But do they want to hear the good story? Do they want to hear all that she's accomplished since
Well,
then?
Well, we're going to do what nobody else did. We're going to videotape her and we're going to talk to her about what she's done since then and how she put her life back together, correct?
Yes, and
Awesome.
I couldn't be happier to have her here.
Me as well. Well, here's our interview with Manny McGowan. Hope you enjoy. So I understand, Maureen. So you have a special friend, somebody that you're very familiar with here today, and I know our goal is to talk about the stigma.
Yeah, so Mandy really was sucked into all of this and became a public figure, not wanting to. In the very beginning, it seems to me, or I hadn't heard about it, when people started taking their cameras out and filming people
Mm,
overdosing or dying, basically, where I don't think that, 10 years ago that would have been seen as okay. I don't know what's happened in this. In the world that is now that people seem to think that that's the answer to a tragedy is to pull out your phone and film the situation. But she unfortunately was one of the first people that I had seen that was filmed overdosing, and then her whole world. I know her whole world got turned upside down because I was there. And but she up until now hasn't spoken to anybody about it. She did an
okay.
interview with the New York Times, but she hasn't really spoken to
Mm,
anybody about what that experience did in her life. So I'm
mm.
really very, very happy to have Mandy here today. Hopefully
Well,
she can explain to other people what this has done to her.
absolutely. Well, let's welcome Mandy. Hi, Mandy. Thank you for
Hello.
joining us today. I know that it was very nice of you to take some time to share your story here today and to help us understand, your experience and how you were on the receiving end of this as an involuntary participant or victim, if you will, and how this
Yeah.
has had an impact on you in your life. So, um, now is this when did this happen? How long ago was this experience?
September 18th, 2016.
Wow, a while ago. And I mean, more into your point. I mean, I remember seeing a lot of these scenarios where people were, and I don't even really know when it happened. It must have been around that time, a few years
Yeah.
ago, that all of a sudden they just started popping up on social media. It was, a video on Facebook. It was a snapshot of two people nodded out or overdosed in a vehicle. With a kid in the
Yeah.
back seat, or there was people on a park bench asleep in their lap or falling backward. And I know at the time, I can just be honest and think back. I mean, I was like, oh man, I remember that, and I felt bad for them, but I never thought about the lasting impact, that snapshot or that video would have on the individual that was in it. I can honestly say I wasn't thinking about it at the time. I was just watching it and experiencing it like everybody else. You know.
I think there's this like uneducated idea that this will show how bad everything is. And I don't think it does that at all. I mean, if you read the newspaper, you know how bad everything is. This just exploits people. And I think that unfortunately, because I've gotten to know you, Mandy, that you're a lovely person who loves her children very much and made mistakes a lot of people made. Unfortunately, there was somebody there that instead of helping, their first reaction was to take out their cell phone and film it, which still to this day, anybody that knows me, all you have to do is bring this up and my blood pressure goes through the roof. It's become like our little joke between each other about how crazy upset I get every time I even talk about it.
Hmm.
But I mean, what's the aftermath of this like for you?
For a long time, I felt like my identity was taken from me. Um, it was the hardest thing I didn't have any clue what treatment was like. So I entered this whole new world
Mm.
of what treatment was, trying to stay sober, going to court dates, the media, the microphones in my mouth,
Jeez.
them with their cameras. And it was the hardest thing to try and stay sober, stay in treatment, knowing that I was all over the world. I was in every magazine, news channel, talk show, website. And at the end of the day, it's like my children had to see this. And
Mm.
that's what was the hardest part, is that my kids would have to see this video for as long as it's going to be out there. And my children didn't deserve that. And then it's like people around the world were the cruel things that they said about me. And I was able to have my phone after a while going into the sober houses and stuff, and I would look it up and look it up and look it up, and that kept me from growing for so long because I would read all the comments, and it was hurtful, 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 hurtful things. And then it's like you question yourself, why am I staying sober? Will I ever get my kids back? The whole world has their view on me, and it's hard. My name's everywhere. My name is everywhere, and
Mm.
it's hard. It's hard.
Right. Your whole person has been associated with that one moment in time,
Yep. Yep.
right? But that nobody knows that. How many years ago was that?
Two
Three,
and a half years ago.
2.5 years ago, and
Mhm.
you're sober
Yep.
and you do wonderful things in the community,
Mm.
Absolutely.
but nobody knows that.
Well, the people that took their time to get to know me do, but
Yes.
other than that, no.
No, but they
That's
haven't followed up with that big news story, right?
yeah.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
not the post that everybody's commenting on. Is where did that take
Exactly.
somebody? Where did that incident that everybody was so interested in watching and commenting on and having personal opinions and judgments about, that there was no, it's what's on the other side. What did that lead to? And
Mhm.
how can people then, give the post of it's amazing that you went from here to there, like, that this
Right.
was the beginning of your journey. I mean, on my darkest day, prior to getting well, if somebody had caught a snapshot of me, I imagine it would be uncomfortable for me to see. It would probably be something that people would have some pretty negative comments to say. And while you were talking, I was just trying to think about if that was me. If I was put in that position, and I was reading those comments, and people were making those comments knowing nothing about me, nothing about the work I'd put in, and how sad I was about that day, but how proud I was of the work I'd put in since then.
Or not even anything about the lack of treatment that was available to her before that day.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and even after that day, we had to, it was insanity trying to get you into any form of treatment at all. She wound up detoxing without a detox. So I mean, just to be able to get into treatment, to be able to try to get her daughter back, or some kind of visitation with her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Well.
Wow. And so I understand you're actively involved now. I mean, you've taken on to volunteer efforts, and trying to make a difference in this. Correct? I mean, you're actively involved in certain things.
Absolutely, every single day, every day.
And what does that look like for you?
Anything I can do to help anybody that's in horrible situation that doesn't have anybody to help them,
right,
I'm always going to be there, because I've been in that situation. And a couple of years ago, I didn't have that insight on it. Like, I was the one who pointed the finger and stuff until it happened to me. But it's like, there's no help out there. There's no help. And it's like, it's not that hard to be nice to somebody, or to ask them if they're okay, or that you love them, or put a smile on their face. Like, that helps me in so many ways. That keeps me sober every single day, to know that I was able to just be a friend to somebody.
Aren't you working in Boston too?
I volunteer.
You volunteer. And what were you doing in the volunteer duties?
I would go out with the outreach team on Mass Ave in that area, and go pick up the dirty needles, help transport people to treatment, help serve them their lunch, just be their friend, check up on them, take them to the crisis center. If they were going into treatment, go through donations to get them some clothes. Just basically just being there for them.
Just being a human being.
Yeah. I mean, I got to know you, and I would say that right from the beginning, that's the person that you've always been. You may not have always always done that, but you were always that person.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We were talking earlier, you and I, Maureen, and mentioned the definition of recovery. As I was hearing it from Russell Brand in his book Recovery, he broke it down to less about recovering the life you had before substance use, but recovering the life that you could have had. And I almost look at that as like the person I was inside got to come out again.
Right.
And that. I know my mother kept looking at me like, I didn't raise you like this. She instilled great values in me. She had a nice moral compass that pointed in the right direction, and she told me to point mine there too. And I had that, except I lost it during that period of time. It didn't mean it wasn't there.
Right.
And when I meet people in recovery, when I meet people like Mandy, who have had really difficult experience and then come back out of it, and they have this amazing level of compassion and understanding and empathy. That's who was there all along. These aren't, and these snapshots, these videos, these whatever, they give this soul-free snapshot where you can say anything you want. You can make any judgments that you want about that person, but it doesn't capture the essence of that person. It says nothing of their humanity and who they are, just that you can judge them. That's a bad person. Look at that picture of them doing that thing, instead of a good person going through a really bad experience and seeing them as the human being they are and what they're capable of. And it's just, there's no way to fight it except for those photos not to exist. Right. For people not to take them in the first place. Because, I mean, I can't imagine a scenario, and this is just me now, me today, maybe me at a past time, it would have been different, but I can't imagine a scenario where I would be walking by and see somebody struggling with the symptoms of substance use, right? With the symptoms of a substance use disorder, and videotape it instead of take an action. As a human being, I don't know. That's like if I saw somebody drowning, would I pull out my video camera and film it? which if I'm not
Exactly.
mistaken, a few years ago, a few boys did and actually ended up getting charged with something because of it. They were filming it instead of helping.
Yeah.
See, that's what I never understood, and I know you feel the same, Andy. What were those people thinking that were standing there filming and not comforting your daughter or
That's
comforting
what
you?
gets me angry.
Yeah, it just
Yeah.
blows my mind. Is how
Yeah.
callous.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. That's the thing that always kind of shocked me is that somebody could stand there and not help. Because you didn't have a sign on you, I'm overdosing. You could have been in any kind of distress. They didn't know what was going on. But
Yeah.
their first urge was to not help you, not help your daughter, but to film it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's I think there's definitely a culture that's being built where if you can find content that people will look at, you can get likes, you can get comments, you can get shares, you can get all that stuff, and people will do really weird things to get themselves on the internet. But capturing something like that is gold to those people, and that's predator. That's terrible. That's preying on people's weaknesses and then trying to monetize it through likes and comments and shares. And I can't palate that right now.
As bad as that is the people that watch it, I will say that I still have not seen it. I
Me
have
either.
not. I refuse to watch it, and I think that is kind of our only defense against things like that is to refuse to watch it, not
Well,
share it, not look at it, refuse.
hmm
And anybody that even put that up on their Facebook, I deleted because I don't want to know people that will watch that.
right.
So, that's the way I can fight. That's the only thing I can do for that, to fight back against that.
Well, they did that with the New Zealand shooter recently.
Yeah.
That they he had the GoPro. When he
Why
went
are
in
we
and,
surprised?
yeah, he went in and
Why
did
are
the
we even
thing.
surprised?
Yeah, he went in and did the thing, and then within moments, the video was being streamed out 1 million+ times. And it was out there, and they were trying to just stop it, and I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it posted. I haven't seen it shared, and I think to a certain extent, maybe the initial rush of people watching it happened, but then ultimately it was. I haven't seen anything else from it. It's not out there anymore. And I think more and more we're becoming aware. I think, and hopefully conversations like this or terrible experiences like that are helping people understand that that's not the right way to deal with this. Is to videotape it and put it out there so everybody can see it. But there's have you ever seen the show Intervention? You guys have watched that show?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
No, Mandy, you've seen it. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
it's actually as a person in recovery myself, it's really hard to watch that show because I would say the first half of it when they're doing the quote documentary part of it where they're following this person around and watching them use, they are in
That's
fact.
why I won't watch it.
But it's very similar. I mean, it's a comparable scenario. Not that these
Yeah.
people aren't voluntarily participating, but their image of being high. They're showing them completely knocked out. They're showing them hammered. They're showing them saying and doing absolutely ridiculous things. I mean, that platform was there. That precedent was set years ago when that was starting to air on A&E, and it just became an acceptable thing for people to see. And then it was like, oh, I'm seeing that stuff in my neighborhood. I should film that. And I'm not saying that that's the cause. Please don't make that connection for me. But I am just saying it's a very familiar thing for me, is because I saw it there. I saw people under the influence, knocked out, using meth, acting very foolish, and it's televised. People want to see it.
I think we learned with the DARE program that talking about drugs, the effect they have on showing those things, that doesn't help anybody. This is not something that keeps people from using drugs, or it makes them decide to go to treatment by seeing other people in terrible situations.
No.
It doesn't help. And I think that we talk a lot about collateral damage. The damage that was done to you was terrible, but the people that really suffered were your children. Completely innocent children. So anybody that says that there's some helpful part of this would have to probably ask your children if this was helpful 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So what, you mentioned earlier that, you felt like this had taken your identity, that this had owned you. And I'm curious to hear how you've worked through that, or how you've gotten to the other side of that, or how you've come to terms and accepted what happened and moved beyond that. I wouldn't mind if you'd share a little bit about that.
Um, I'm proud of who I am today. I'm very proud of who my name is, what my name is, how far I've come. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm a good mother. I was a good mother. I made some horrible choices. But I'm not going to hide from what happened. It happened. I got help. I'm grateful to be alive. And I'm not going to let that situation control my life anymore.
Mm,
I did something about it, and I continue to do something about it every single day. I'm a grateful recovering addict, and I'm Andy McGowan, and
I love it.
I'm just not going to hide from that anymore.
I love it. I'm so
Hi.
happy to hear that.
Yeah. Well, it's been like an unbelievable pleasure to watch you get through this to the other side and know the person that you are.
Every one of us, every one of us goes through a certain amount of trauma
Hmm.
in our active addiction. While we're out there, and I've had I've had my name in the paper. I've had my community, my whole community, the same community I got well in as the community I was sick in, which means that everybody in my community got to experience my symptoms to one degree or another. My family, my
Yeah.
friends, the community, the police department, everybody. And getting well, if I was trapped under the weight of my own shame, I never would have got well. And what you just said, I'm grateful, I'm proud of my name. I love that. I absolutely love that, because that's the place. If we're gonna get well, if people are gonna get well and get beyond the trauma and damage that we experience while we're active, that's it right there. Get proud, own it, be okay with the
Yeah.
fact that you had symptoms related to an illness that was somewhat out of your control, and that once it was identified, you addressed it. Once you had a chance, once you knew
Hmm.
what was available, what did you do? You changed your life.
Nothing.
You did it.
Yeah.
You did the thing. I mean, if we were having a conversation 2.5 years later and you were still actively using, I don't know that we'd be having that same conversation right now about that one particular experience, because there'd be more, they'd be compounded. But this was the thing. This was the catalyst that shouldn't be seen as a negative in your life. It should be seen as the positive that brought you back. And it wasn't
Exactly.
shared that way. It wasn't discussed that way. There wasn't an opportunity for people to comment on that as the beginning of your journey into recovery. It was, you were identified as that shameful moment. And that's just
Yeah.
so sad for me, you know. Well, I'm sorry that you went through that, but I am so very happy to hear that you are where you are today, and so very grateful to have you share it with us today. So,
It's pretty amazing. I don't know, Mandy, if you could do or say if there was one thing that you could change about this whole situation, or going forward. I mean, what would you tell people that maybe are picking up that camera while somebody's overdosing?
Up the phone and call 911, or, to help them, stand by their side, let them know that you're there. If they're unconscious, still stay by their side. Get help there. That's someone's sister, daughter, brother, husband, wife, child. You know, it could be anybody. And it's just not okay. That's not helping them. It's not helping them at all. And if you haven't been through it, you really shouldn't speak on it either.
that's a good point. That's a
Yeah.
good point. I've seen a lot of people talking recently about, if we're going to have conversations about how to address this particular issue, the people who are going through it need to have a seat at the table, right?
Yeah. So she really amazes me because this is, as we both know, hard enough to accomplish sobriety, um, and to pull your life together and to start in a different direction and go back to school and do good things if no one's watching. But when you have people, you have to live this huge thing down.
Mm,
You've had so many traumatic things happen in your own life because of that one event, and you also that people are waiting for her to fail. They've
yeah,
kind of, and I mean, I just think she's pretty amazing.
I agree. I agree absolutely. I mean, that was obviously, it was great to hear from her. I know she hasn't had a real chance to talk about this publicly since it happened. So, I mean, having the opportunity to share her experience of, going through that struggle, facing that adversity, which let's be honest with you. I mean, that probably could have kicked a lot of people right back into their substance use. That could have kicked people right back in and said, you know what, it's not worth it. Nobody's going to believe me anyway. Nothing's going to get better. It's always going to be this hard. Those are the types of things that can really, diminish the results for somebody who could get well.
Plus, I mean, and that's only half the trauma that she's experienced in the last couple of years because of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't even get into that,
the toll it takes on the family, children. It's like, and how deep do you go? Like we talked about this, and I think in our intro, how deep are we going to go with this? That this impacts everybody, whether you think it does or it doesn't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I don't know if I have it. Nobody better film anything in front of me.
I'll go in and just swat the camera out of their hands. You know what I mean?
Oh,
well,
gosh.
I think it also comes down to like, what are you going to do with it? I mean, why are you recording this, and what are you going to do with it? What's your intention? And I think there's a difference between documenting events, which I think some people do for for justifiable reasons. Like you might document an accident. Or you might document a crime scene, or you might document an incident to protect yourself from legal repercussions or something like that. But, to walk up to a situation like that, and, I like the answer to, what would you do? What would you say? And it's like, just don't, help the person.
Yeah.
Don't videotape them,
Right,
do
right.
something about it.
Or at least help her daughter. That's the thing I can never get my head around. But I think that you would hope that this is a relatively small part of the population that would do something so despicable and just crappy.
Yeah,
and
you would hope.
That is people, we hope that if there's only a small percentage that would do that, we need to be responsible by not sharing it and not watching it.
Well, that's it. Like we said earlier, that gymnast that mentioned, my pain is not your entertainment. I mean, that just kind of echoes in my mind. And, that's basically the purpose of this interview, was to help people understand that somebody else's pain is not your entertainment. These are people. These are human beings. These are lives. These are, you don't know the person. You don't know about their journey. You don't know about their day. You don't know what they're going through. And, most of these people definitely don't know where she is now.
Right.
Nobody followed the case. Nobody was interested once it became, less about the overdose and more about somebody getting well. I don't hear
No, and certainly all interest was lost when she started to do well.
Exactly. I mean, how many success stories do you see on the front page? How many times is there breaking news? Somebody just got well today. You're like, what? It's not there. So, having her come on and share this story was really, it was uplifting. And I think for anybody that's listening, that's, wondering about, what you can do, if you're ever in that situation, like we said, just, put down your camera and help, connect with the human there. There's a human being that's suffering. This is an illness. This is something that's taking toll on a large population of people. And it's a plague, and it definitely needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed with kindness and compassion. It needs to be addressed with humanity, and definitely not by filming people and shaming them on social media for having an illness.
Absolutely.
It's like somebody was having a seizure, or was in a diabetic coma, and instead of helping and calling 911, you're filming it and videotaping it in the hopes that people will see how bad diabetes is.
That's ridiculous.
What's the point? That's not a thing.
No one would do that. No.
Well, maybe there's a small population of weirdos that would do that. But
yes, but please, let's not share it if they do that.
Yeah, we're asking them not to do it. So if you're out there and you're listening and you do this stuff, cut it out. Right?
Oh, boy.
Well, again, this was a great interview. I'm really glad that Mandy joined us.
Me too.
Do we have?
Proud of her. Very proud of her.
She is, yeah. What a champion, right? I mean, in the face of adversity, getting well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'd like to thank all of our listeners for joining us today on this episode of Collateral Damage. As always, if you'd like to find out all the different ways that you can listen to our podcast, you can visit our website, which is www.cdpodcast.com. There are many different ways to listen and subscribe, and we encourage you to choose the one that's most appropriate for you. And as always, I would encourage our listeners to get informed.
Stay connected.
Thank you for joining us.